All right, Jim, we're ready.
All right. Well, I would like to now call the November 15th, 2023 Longmont Sustainability Advisory Board meeting to order. Could we please start with the roll call?
Yes, Jim Metcalf,
I am here.
Mary Lynn,
Here.
Michelle Roth,
Here.
Charles Musgrave,
I'm here.
Robert Davidson,
Hello.
and Ralph Grosswald.
Here.
And Kate Collardson is not able to join us today. So, and Councilmember Martin is also out. So for staff members, we have Francie Jaffe,
Here.
Susan Bartlett,
Here.
and Heather McIntyre is here. Chair, you have a quorum.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have our couple statements that we read. I'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that Longmont sits on the traditional territory of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and other indigenous peoples. We honor the history and the living and spiritual connection that the first peoples have with this land. It is our commitment to face the injustices that happened when the land was taken, and to educate our communities, ourselves, and our children to ensure that these injustices do not happen again. And our inclusion statement as well. The Sustainability Advisory Board embraces diverse perspectives from its members and the public. To create an inclusive space where everyone feels welcome to share their opinion, the board asks that all attendees listen and speak with respect and avoid attacks on individuals or specific group identities. All right, so item 6, the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any changes or corrections that need to be amended from the minutes? And if by the head shaking that's a no, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure, I'll move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Wonderful. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Mary, are you abstaining because
I wasn't here. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was just making sure. All right. Staff, do we have any agenda revisions or are there any new documents to be submitted?
No.
Wonderful. We are flying. We're on to general business. So it's the general business item today is the sustainability tax letter of support. And I believe that Francie is going to be talking about this and not Lisa. Is that correct?
Yes, Lisa
Wonderful.
sends her apologies. She very last minute could not make the meeting today. And she did have a couple items that she wanted to share before I got into the sustainability tax. Not only did she apologize for missing the last meeting as well as this meeting, but also wanted to say the agendas have been a little bit later lately. There have been things that she's been wanting to bring back to this board. There's just been some delays. So I just wanted to share that from her before diving into this sustainability tax priorities. We brought the original proposal, I believe, in September to the board. It has since been refined down to just 3 different items. So 2 under extreme heat resilience, the extreme heat resilience through energy efficiency, building electrification, and health and safety measures, and implementation of community-driven cooling systems solutions. So these are continuations of programs that started a lot this year. And then for the zero waste resolution implementation, continuing funding to support the use of big belly recycling bins at key park locations. So those are the 3 items for that we are applying to for next year's sustainability tax funding.
Great. Are there any questions that people have from the board? Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's our update.
Yeah, we do need you all to sign to vote. Yeah,
we need to sign this. Okay, so we need to vote on signing it. Is it in the packet?
I did not see it in the packet. I did wonder about that.
It didn't get included. So Francie, if you have it, if you want to share it with the board members so we can read through it, that would be great.
Great.
I thought it was just me not remembering seeing it in the packet. Apparently it wasn't there to see. Oh, Francie, you're muted.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I am talking a lot. Let me know. I was just trying to say, let me know when you would like me to scroll down.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know I was muted.
And I guess my recollection is we did discuss these things previously, right? And we're generally in favor of them. This is just putting them in the letter. Francie, are these things we did discuss before?
These were items that were discussed in September. It is a shorter list than what was discussed in September,
Right.
but there are no new items.
Okay.
And yes, when we presented first in September, we were still refining which ones and that we should select.
Oh, thank you.
And is it the wastewater treatment part that was taken out, the carbon footprint part?
Yes, that
Okay.
that one was removed. There was also, I believe, another potential zero waste resolution implementation idea. But and unfortunately, due to Lisa being very last minute and not being able to attend, I wasn't able to check in with her on why some things were removed. But I'm sure she'd be happy to provide additional context. And purely a guess, is more due to maybe potential of other funding becoming available to fund those projects, or maybe there are pauses and the timing wasn't working out as well, or due to wanting to focus and prioritize funding to these projects.
Do you know if there's been a change in the amount of money that is being targeted here? If that's a reason that things were.
And I can pull up so this is the breakdown. So there's Longmont, it's a 201,000, about with a $50,000 match. I think that was I don't think that was a decrease from what was shared in September. So it could be that there was and I unfortunately don't have the financial breakdown of what is going to each of them. But there could have been a possibility that one had a greater need. I also know that there also is, I think there are some other financial opportunities that have come up since September as well. So it could easily be due to that reason. So very, very speculating, don't have the context.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm, oops, that's not what I wanted to click.
Yeah, I was just looking at my notes from that meeting, and the number of totals that I have on the three things add up to something a little bit less than that. So it doesn't look like we had some drastic reduction in the number of funds that we were expecting. But those are also my notes, so I'm not sure how much I.
That sounds right, Jim. When I was looking at the presentation from
Okay.
September, I also thought our estimation of what we would be allocated was a little bit lower than what it actually was. That's my recollection as well.
Right. Okay. Ralph.
Francie, I'm sorry, I think you had up what the Longmont's portion of this is. What's the amount that Longmont is committing to?
So our allocation looks like it's just over $201,000, and our match is required to be just over $50,000.
That's what the city of Longmont is committing to, the 50 grand.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other questions? People need more time to read it. No shame in that. Okay, so if I understand properly, then what we need to do here is to vote on whether or not we want to send this. Is That is correct. Okay, do people feel comfortable voting with the small changes that have been made? Okay.
Yeah.
You can't see who I'm pointing at. That was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I
of you,
realize that.
Robert.
Yeah, I move that we approve the letter that's been drafted here.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of approving this letter? Raise your hand.
All right.
That's 5-4. All opposed? Okay, one.
Okay, and the
So we have 5-4 and one against. So I believe it passes.
Will it be sent that letter? I guess will it be in the notes for this meeting or?
That's a great question, Michelle. Can we make sure that the final version of the letter is in a packet that's sent out to the board?
We can do that. And then Jim, I'll send it over, or Francie, will you send it to Jim for his signature on that? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So that wraps up our general business. Do we have any public who want to be heard today? We do not have any
We
public who
don't.
want to be heard. Okay. So then we are on to other business. And this is just a discussion that we as a board need to have, and I believe we should probably make a decision on it as to where we want to have the meetings next year. So we've been virtual now for a few years, meeting remotely. Before that, there were a few of us. Let's see, I guess Mary and I are the two that remember meeting in person back in the oldie times, and Kate. So we should decide and have a discussion as a group as to whether or not we want to stay virtual or we want to return in person, or maybe some other option that I don't know about. So I will open the floor for ideas. Ralph.
It's been very convenient. I run two companies. It's been very convenient to be able to do this from my desk. But not having met you folks, other than running into Heather in a restaurant, what I was thinking, but not pushing this, but just my own personal preference would be that once a quarter we meet in person, or at the very least we start out the beginning of the year that way, so we can all see each other. I think it could help build a little of the unity in our group and coherence in the group, and then have two meetings that would be virtual for convenience, but see people again, if it makes sense, or revisit it. I mean, we could decide for the year or just decide for the quarter, but just my personal thing would be, I appreciate the fact that I can be working up to 5 minutes before the meeting, but I'd love to say hello to you folks, not having met, really any of you. I met Francie at an event that we were at a booth together, and other than that, I haven't even run into people in in Costco. So that's just a thought.
Mary.
So I would, it's interesting, Ralph, I was thinking the same thing, that I would like to have a quarterly meeting, but I would like there to be a component which is an open forum where members of the public can speak and we can actually engage in dialogue with them. I think that would be welcomed by multiple segments in the community. And I don't think we've been successful in coming up with a way to engage the active community that is working for many of the people who are actually interested in these issues. So most of the meetings, let's say we have 10 meetings a year, we have 11 meetings a year. Yeah. So we could have let's say 3 open forums and 8 meetings a year that were virtual. I think that would cover a lot of bases. Does that sound like a good adjustment to what you were saying, Ralph?
Yes, and Mary, I really appreciate that comment. And again, some of you have been doing this a lot longer than me, but it's something about the activities that we're doing that seems very isolated from the community itself. And I know that it puts a little of a burden on us to have to listen, but I think that's what we're here for. And we're representing the folks in our community. And so the opportunity for those people, I don't mind spending an extra hour or so to giving people the opportunity. And not only that, it gives people the opportunity to see us in person and know who's representing these very important issues in our community. So I think it's a great suggestion, and I'm willing to put up with what comes with that. And we know that it's a little of a grab box in terms of what happens, but I think it's very important and well stated. Thank you for that, Mary.
Yeah, well, sorry, Robert.
Sure.
Yeah, I like your idea, Ralph. I was thinking something similar. It'd be good to meet in person periodically, and so I support that. I enjoy engaging with the public. I've done several of the city's events, where the EV event and the food trucks event, and I forget a couple of these various events, and it was fun to interact with them and do some back and forth, and in some cases doing some education. I'm not sure, Heather, what's the rules on our engagement and what we can do. I'm pretty sure there must be some rules that city legal probably would have us abide by.
Yeah, I think we've shared information about that when we had this discussion earlier in the year. So we could just resend that information and remind you all that the purpose of this board is really to advise council. It's not a city council situation where you are representing the people of Longmont. Nobody voted for you to be on this board. The city council is the ones who appointed you to advise them. And so for you to be able to speak on behalf of the city is really not your role as an advisory board. So I would caution too much of going back open forum or going back and forth. That's really the constituents' opportunities to take things to council, to do that with them during their open forums. It is possible for people to bring things to this board in the public invited to be heard portion of this meeting. And from there, if the board decides that it's something that they want to engage in discussion on, it's able to be put on a future agenda for the board to be discussing. And it would be then in line with the open records in Colorado Sunshine Law for discussion. So really that is the format for what this board is, their purpose is.
Robert had his hand up right after Charles and then Mary.
So I was mostly going to say what I think Heather said, was that I was worried about us expanding beyond our sort of reach and role. But I think the kind of follow-on thought on that is, I do wonder if maybe we aren't hearing from the community because of the challenge in the time window that they have to speak in the public invited to be heard section. So is there, I think an interesting compromise might be to hear if there's a way to create a forum where we can hear 8 minutes a person or something, where there's maybe an opportunity for a larger way to get their concern or issue communicated in a more complete fashion. There might be some value in that, but I also don't know what the rules are there.
Mary?
So by having an open conversation and being able to ask questions of the public, we're not acting as city council, we're acting as advisors who are informing ourselves about the issues so that we can advise city council. I think the lack of a formal structure for back and forth, question and answer, we have done that many, many times in this board since I've been here. I just think it would be nice to formalize that and to be able to have conversations with informed and concerned citizens who are, maybe bringing printed materials that they could pass out and asking questions and deciding further courses of action would be useful in our role as information gatherers so that we can advise city council.
Michelle?
I also agree with I think Ralph, you had a great idea of a couple maybe quarterly meetings in person. Because if I'm trying to entertain my 2.5-year-old while doing this meeting, I agree Zoom is great too. But it would I would love to actually see everyone in person once in a while. That was my main point, but I also am I don't really know how to the best way to proceed. I'm still taking it all in, but I agree that something could change with the public invited to be heard, but yeah, I was just also concerned about like me responding and, you know, not being elected person and, you know, just trying to get information and, you know, being held to something that I just said, you know, yes to or something. But yeah, so that that was my concern. So I don't know what the best way with, but I agree that something could change with the public invited to be heard. I'm just not quite sure what the best option for me.
If my memory serves me right, we did kind of modify a way that we thought we could respond that was in line with what the city legal people told us we could do. Is that correct? But since we've limited comment to people who live in Longmont, and I agree with Robert also that perhaps the time limit is a limiting factor. The time window, not only when the meeting is, but also the 3 minutes is pretty short. That there might be ways that we just had a dramatic reduction in the number of people who were commenting once we limited it to people who lived in the city. I just don't feel like we actually had a chance to kind of like give that a test drive because it kind of coincided with a dramatic reduction in the number of comments. Ralph?
I wonder if we could move in terms of moving towards some resolution, this into two sections. First, decide what we want to do about our meetings and maybe get a motion on the floor to get some consensus on that. And then I certainly think, personally, I would love to explore, once we know what our meetings are going to be, how we can find a good compromise that's within the, and Heather, thank you very much for that reminder and clarification of where we stand. But I do think, you know, the way Mary's stating it makes sense to me, which is, yes, we're an advisory board to the city council, but we want to also make sure that people who have issues in the community, you know, have access to us if they want it. And it's our choice always to decide whether we want to advise the city council on these issues or not. But anything that we can do that allows us to be better informed, not only of the issues of sustainability, but also to the needs of the community, I think is a step in the right direction. Obviously, always being aware that we have certain guidelines that we need to adhere to. So if it's okay, Jim, I would make a motion if you're ready for that, that we structure our meetings beginning in 2024, where one meeting is in person and 2 meetings are virtual, and that we do that on a quarterly basis, adjusting for months when there's you know, not a meeting. I'm not sure, maybe in December if we don't meet or whatever, but is that okay to present that as a motion?
I second that motion, Ralph.
Yeah, I think that so maybe we should just clarify, do we want to just say the first meeting of the quarter is in person? And then the subsequent 2 are remote, just so we can kind of plan ahead. Is that
Well, hang on. I think Ralph
oh.
made a motion. I second it now. Can we have discussion on it? Is that what we're doing, James?
That's
I was
actually
just
a proper, that's actually a proper format for doing it. Once it's been moved and seconded, then discussion usually happens after that before the vote.
I'm mainly clarifying the order with which we do things to make sure that what we're voting on is clear. And so yeah, Ralph.
I would be happy to, if it's not out of order, to modify my motion to exactly what you suggested, Jim.
Do you want to restate it, Ralph, for the record?
Sure. So I move that the Sustainability Advisory Board, beginning in 2024, hold each quarter one meeting in person, which would be the first meeting of the quarter, and subsequent meetings would be via video conference.
Second,
Wonderful. We have a second. Is there anything else people have before we vote on that? And I just also want to make sure that that is with the city staff. It seems like most of us on the board have voiced support for this before the vote. I just want to make sure that that's something that is fine with city staff.
Up to you guys for how you want to meet.
That's
Great.
what I was
Okay.
gonna say. Thanks, Heather.
Okay.
the only thing I
So-
want to say on this is that I would recommend that in the summer, be perhaps in August be when we skip the if we were going to say do 3 in-person meetings and then 8 virtual, just because that's when people are on vacation and such, and it seems like people get re-engaged in stuff in the fall. So I just wanted to put that out there, even though there's only 2 meetings in the third quarter. I think it would be useful to have one of the in-person meetings in the fourth quarter, even though we only have, we have September, October. No, we have October, November in the fourth quarter. But I think that people are really re-engaged in the fourth quarter with city stuff. So I would prefer that we skipped one in the summer. So if we can pass this with the agreement that we'll fiddle a little bit with the schedule, then I would vote for it.
Okay.
So if we did it the first month of the quarter, it would be January, April, July, and September.
mean
Right.
October?
Is it
October.
October?
October. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, October.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so that works.
I don't think in quarters very often. So okay. So we feel good with that. So what Ralph proposed and what has been seconded is that the first meeting of every quarter will be in person, and then the subsequent 2 will be virtual. We don't need to amend to that. Okay.
So,
Are there any things people would like to add before we vote? Okay. All in favor of having the first meeting of every quarter be in person and the subsequent 2 virtual in 2024? Raise your hand.
I
It carries unanimously. Nobody's opposed and nobody abstains. Okay. So I guess the second part then that was brought up as discussion was how we could try to encourage more, how we could maybe try to make it easier or make it better for us to hear from the public. There having some meetings in person might do that for some people. I don't know. I don't particularly remember a ton of people coming to our meetings when we did have them in person, but that could change. But so there are some ideas that people have had, and I wonder if it might be good to, like, one strategy, I guess, would be for us to write down a plan of things that we think might help, and then that's something that we could vote on at our next meeting, just kind of like we've done with some other changes, to make sure that things are okay from the city side, but also are trying to achieve goals. So somebody would want to maybe volunteer to kind of write up a little outline of how we might improve these things. That might be a path forward. Mary?
So it sounds like the 2 proposals on the table are that we give people an extended period of time to speak, and that there be a free flow that we formalize an exercise of free flow of question and answer with the folks speaking, which is something that we've done in the past, but we haven't formalized.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I don't remember us doing that with public invited to be heard. I remember us doing that with people who are on the agenda.
No, it has happened with public invited to be heard. It happened quite a few times. But in any case, I think it would be useful to the public to feel that they were understood, and because sometimes people just present something, they don't have any idea how it landed, and to feel that they might have an opportunity to engage in a further conversation with anyone on the board who's interested outside of the board. There's, if the board members, are able to request that and so forth.
Just
So
a
anyway,
reminder from the city attorney's office in the meeting that we discussed this before, if you engage with one person, you have to engage with all of them. And if you increase the amount of time that people have to speak, which is fine, 3 minutes is just really kind of along with the city council guidelines that we have done that. Other boards have 5 minutes that people have to speak. You can set it at whatever time you would like, but just remember that we have 2-hour meeting, and if you have quite a few people who show up and each of those takes up a chunk, remember that that cuts into the agendas and those kinds of things too, or it would need to extend the times of your meetings. So those are just some things to keep in mind when you're discussing possibilities for what you want to do.
having attended other boards and commissions, if you present something and they think it's interesting, they just talk to you about it. So
those are council advisory boards that you've been to?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the P&Z and they just, no, it was parks. It was parks, and they just kind of, they would say, oh, so it was this or blah, blah. And I think it's, it didn't seem, it seemed like it was just part of, civic engagement to me, where there wasn't a whole formal thing around this. But if we wanted to make it formal, I think 5 minutes for people to speak, and then we can ask questions if we'd like. We're under no obligation to engage in a long interaction with the members of the public, but if members of the board feel that they have further questions they want to ask, I think that formalizing that so the public feels that they can have an engagement, and we could ask one question of every person who speaks. It doesn't have to be a 1-hour engagement with each person.
Thoughts from other board members? Ralph?
I will just say quickly that I support engaging the public within the guidelines that we're able to, that is just, I just think it's better for the community. I know that there will be risks involved with that, and I think 5 minutes makes sense. 3 minutes is a little limiting. 8 minutes that was suggested, that could get a little lengthy, but I think 5 minutes makes sense to me. And then the opportunity to be able to ask questions back, to me, is very important, because we're really not going to be informed if we're left with questions about what's been presented, and it could be something that is significant that we may feel we really need to know more about, and it would be helpful in my mind to be able to do that. Again, I understand that this is a squirrely thing to get into, but my general approach would be to err to the side of taking advantage of the interests and knowledge and research of people in our community. And if it doesn't work, we'll change it.
Okay, thanks, Ralph. Robert?
So I like the idea of 5 minutes. When I said 8, that was just kind of a random off the cuff number. Can we also put some sort of limit on the amount of time? I think I've seen in other places where the public invited to be heard can be up to 30 minutes or up to an hour. And if there are more people who sign up to participate, then the standard minimum, maximum time would allot, then everybody's time gets compressed. So I think we could manage in the what feels like unlikely event that we would get so much participation that we couldn't accommodate it.
I like that, Robert.
Okay. In terms of engaging with the public, I guess my big concern is I don't know the expertise. I only know the passion of the person who is bringing their information to the table, and it's really easy for me to fall into sort of the sense of security that everyone who's bringing information has accurate information. And I really like the idea of us saying, hey, this, not engaging with them. For me, I think that's where I feel successful, is sort of saying, oh, I hear them, and then I can think about that. And if I feel comfortable enough in the moment to say, I want us to follow up, I'd like city staff to bring in somebody who we can further qualify their expertise. to provide advice on the issue or to reflect upon it, rather than, jumping in at the moment to say this is something that definitely needs to be on an agenda for the future. But that's my kind of where my head is.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, I think it's actually a very good and very important point, and I just want to share my experience when we're working on smart meters. So I got engaged to a certain degree with some of the people that did make the presentation, and I was going back and forth with them, and they gave me what they felt was a very important resource, and that had been published in some important health journals. And when I went and did research on that particular person, it turned out that when the health journal itself research the data further, they retracted it. So you're absolutely right. It does very much put the onus on us to verify and evaluate the information that we get. And so I'm just, just giving the other side that this comes with the territory. If we're going to be taking this information, that we have the responsibility, whatever the proper channels are, to evaluate the information that we're getting. But I think that's always our responsibility.
Well, and I think that's a great point. And I also wonder if maybe being able to ask a few clarifying questions might aid us in that endeavor. Instead, we might be able to like, oh, could you tell me what your source for that piece of information is? Or especially because because of the workload that it had on city staff, we are no longer getting emails forwarded to us from a variety of people. That perhaps it would be an opportunity for us to get the little piece that we need to actually verify or do the research. And I guess it is also a case that if we start it and we go through a quarter with it and we think it is not meeting the desired effects, there's nothing stopping us from changing it. So we could do it there's also, I think we can think of it as a trial. Charles.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of frustrating actually sometimes when the public comes to us with something and we just listen and we don't say anything. And I can see how it's frustrating for the public not knowing and getting any feedback. Although I still understand that we have guidelines and rules about what we're able to do in terms of what our purpose and role is as an advisory board. One thing, and the public doesn't see this, but I know Robert, you've done the same thing. After public invited to be heard, something comes up or something's forwarded to us by email. We do a literature search. We go dig into the literature, we read some of the papers that we find, the ones that seem most relevant, that seem most reputable, etc. And then we've educated ourselves, but the public doesn't see that. And so in some ways they don't see it. So it's hard for them to, they don't know that we've actually went and looked into it after we've heard from them. And at the end, that just helps inform our opinion. I don't feel that the public invited to be heard comes in, with their opinion. I think with their opinions, it's useful to hear them, but I don't want to, inquire, have a long inquiry with them, mainly because, it's just, again, we can't qualify their, basically what their expertise is in the area. And it just brings up, enormous kind of, I don't know, just uncertainty about all the things that they're saying. It's easier to kind of cap it and then for us to just go off and do our own research.
I mean, I guess so. If I understand it correctly, if we wanted the ability to ask clarifying questions to make sure that we understood what it was somebody was trying to get across to us, and so that we kind of understood the information that they were giving to us, if we wanted to go off and do, and I did the same thing, with all of the public invited to be heard. That's why I take notes during meetings, is so I can go off and do these things. But if so, the burden on us would be that we would have to make sure that we would ask a question or engage with everybody who presents. And I don't think that would be overly onerous. But I think we'd probably want to make sure that it was a team effort, so it wasn't just one person always asking a clarifying question if it's difficult to think of one, which can sometimes be the case. But am I right, Heather, that we could engage in questions with as long as everybody is getting everybody is being interacted with, then there's nothing in the city guidelines that stops us from at least trying it.
That's correct. As far as like clarifying questions and those kinds of things, you're welcome to ask those. I know council does that too, so it's not a big thing for that. It's just when you start engaging in dialogue with them that could be misconstrued as you representing the city, that is the issue.
Okay. Ralph?
I have two thoughts. First of all, I think it might be helpful, Heather, and I'm not sure whose responsibility it would be, and maybe we have something like this, that there was a statement that could be read at the beginning of this so that people actually understand what and I'm a member of the board, had to be reminded about what our role is so that they understand that they can't, they're trying to convince us of something as if we're the city council. I think it's important that there be some sort of a statement that clarifies exactly what, they're doing and what our responsibility is and what limitations we have on what we're able to do. That's one thing to think about. And sorry to muddy the waters, but another thought is, if we ask an engaging question, how do we then limit, what if they talk their 5 minutes and somebody asks a 30-second question and they want to expound on that answer for 20 minutes? So do we need some sort of a way to make sure this doesn't get out of hand once we engage them?
I think the moderator can handle that. They can say, try to keep your responses to blah, blah.
Yeah, and Mary, I would imagine whoever is chairing could be the moderator, and I think I don't chair that often, but I'd feel comfortable in that role, I think. Charles, do you have
Yeah, I like the idea earlier. It was actually a similar. Thanks, Jim. I liked your idea, and I was thinking something very similar. It's not. I mean, it kind of is a clarifying question, which is essentially to ask, could they provide the source so that we can go and look into it further. I think that's almost like a default question if we don't have anything else. But definitely want to avoid, by dialogue. Sometimes that dialogue, you don't want it to end up in a debate with the public, and so just looking for something that we can go and look into further, I think is a good way to kind of essentially table it for the moment and allow us to go and look into it. They were heard. Then we can go look into it.
Robert, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, Ralph, that's a really good idea to provide some supporting language to set expectations for both the public and for us for what that engagement would look like, so that we don't try to go outside of bounds. We need to draft that statement. So I don't know. I know Jim's had a lot of whereas experience lately, but
I don't think it would be a whereas though. My new line on my CV is useless to me now. Yeah. So okay. So I guess I don't want to, but it seems like we're kind of converging on an idea of expanding the time to 5 minutes. Mary, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah. So part one would be expanding the time for public invited to be heard to 5 minutes, but setting some overall cap on the total length of that time. So it would be 5 minutes or 30 minutes divided by the number of people who want to be heard, whichever is larger, something like that, right? And then as a board, making it so that we will be engaging with every person who speaks, moderated by the chair, and we can all agree on that, to make sure that we are efficient and don't just go down dead ends or something like that. Which is just with the understanding that every person who speaks is going to be interactive with. Seems like we're kind of converging on that, and that we're
I wish
If-
you would
if
just
it-
put that forth as a move, they would move that because
You know, I never
was
know if
perfect.
when you're, I never know if when you're chairing that you're supposed to move for things. I don't know if that's actually appropriate. So that's
You
one
can
of the reasons I
actually,
don't.
Yeah, you
you're,
can.
you're
Oh,
also a
oh.
board, you're also a board member,
Okay.
so you can
Sweet.
move.
Okay. Well, then I will put it. So I move that starting at our first meeting in 2024, the amount of time that is allotted to public invited to be heard is increased to 5 minutes, with the total amount of time for that session not being more than 30. And that we will, as a board, begin asking or begin interacting with the public after they are done speaking to us in a brief forum, clarifying questions as moderated by the chair. That's what I move.
Second,
Mary seconds it. All in favor?
I
Aye.
think we should have
Aye.
some discussion before we vote.
Oh,
oh yeah,
I'm sorry.
This is where we have the
Yeah, I
discussion.
apologize. Yes.
I don't like the word forum in there.
Okay.
I thought forum has a specific meaning, and I think there's a certain set of kind of rules of order that probably have to be established, and I think a forum probably doesn't describe the kind of engagement that we're trying to have with the public.
Just for my own brain, could we vote on the 5 minutes and then come back and vote on the next part? Would that be appropriate for people?
Okay with me.
Because I do not remember the wording that I said. So if I tried to amend it, I actually don't remember where I said forum. I apologize.
I
So-
changed my second to for the 5 minutes.
Okay, so I move that starting in 2024, we will be allotting 5 minutes for each public invited to be heard, with the total amount of that time not exceeding 30 minutes.
Second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now, Charles, do you have wording that you think might work better for this?
I would not use the term forum, because a forum
Okay.
has a very specific meaning. So I wouldn't use forum, but I think, so this part, I don't think we'll be ready to vote on it, because I think we'll have to both come to some, language for the rules of order, and then have the rules of order checked with legal to make sure that it's okay. But I'm in favor of, generally in favor of having some kind of engagement where we're able to ask clarifying questions and for the source of information. But I think forum was not the right way to describe it.
Okay. Because I think if we do want to, like, I don't think we need to go for additional legal clarification if we just want, as long as we're saying that every person who speaks will be interacted with. I think we had that clarified last year. So I feel if we wanted to come up with the proper words to describe what we think would be a good idea for that, I don't think we need to.
Right.
I
Yeah.
believe.
I think if you were to have something more like a forum, and so you'd have to have specific rules of order for that forum, then you'd have to have that checked with legal. I agree with that, but not if we, and Heather could confirm this, not if we maybe just only have clarifying questions and engage with each member with at least one question.
Ralph, I think you had your hand next. Sorry. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I had a question about that. Like, if we're asking clarifying questions, do we have to do that with everyone? That sort of seems
Well, we have to ask.
necessary for those who need clarification. Like, there's a difference between engaging and like having a back and forth dialogue, I would think, and having just a question that says, I didn't understand that, or can you give me an additional reference on this? Like that feels a lot different than like just an open discussion dialogue. Are those treated separately, Heather? Do we know that?
I don't know. I think we would have to get that clarified by legal, but I think that if I remember correctly from what Jamie Roth, our deputy city attorney, shared with us at previous meeting, I'd have to go back and look, but I think you are able to ask clarifying questions now. But if you were to engage in conversation or dialogue with the members who are presenting ideas, you would have to engage with each person that was speaking, is what I remember.
So Heather, if it's only clarifying questions, then we don't have to do that with we don't have to do that equally with the members of the public. We can just do that
I don't believe
as
so, but
needed. Okay.
I have to go back and see what Jamie's stuff said, but
Ralph, yeah.
I do think it's important, and I'm not sure if we need to have a motion on this, that we do set expectations in the beginning so that people understand the rules, as I mentioned. But further to that, as I've been listening to everyone speak, I think that it's likely that anyone who comes to speak will have the expectation that a discussion is going to take place, that they're going to expect that they're going to be the star of the show talking about this issue that they're very passionate about, that they're prepared to debate it, and they need to understand, I think, beforehand, because you could spend 2 hours with one person who feels, very strong about a particular issue, that we should just really be thinking about exactly what the ground rules are going to be for this, because I think that people's expectations, I mean, I've spoken at city council meetings, and when I lived in North Carolina, where we went back and forth for 40 minutes. We were fighting an asphalt plant that was coming into a non-zoning area in a residential area, and there were a lot of us that were very passionate about trying to stop that. And so on the one hand, this is why I have sympathy for the people who have issues like that. But on the other hand, we need to be prepared and make sure we're very clear on exactly what is in bounds and what's not, both legally and what we feel we want to do.
So, I mean, I again, one path forward could be, am I correct that we don't meet in December? Okay, so our next meeting will be the in-person in January. One potential is if somebody wanted to volunteer to draft up little guidelines that could be run through the city, and that we could vote on them during the general business on our first meeting in January, and that they would then be in effect for the next item, which is public invited to be heard. If we wanted to make sure the wording was right and that people felt that we have the proper little preamble and all those things, it seems like we could have it in place for the next public invited to be heard session that we have. But perhaps if somebody wanted to take the lead on drafting up some, I'm not sure what the form of it would be, but the language and the guidelines, making sure not to use the word forum. Ralph.
I don't. I know I would be happy to, except I don't think I have the expertise for what needs to be done. I wondered if we would just sort of canvass our board on what our preferences are and kind of come to consensus and have a staff person. Again, I don't know the protocols well enough to know, but obviously there's a lot of guidelines about this when you're talking about the public. And so I'm trying to figure out how we can sort of get our general preferences and then put it through the proper authority to make sure that it's right. And it seems like it would have to be a staff person that would actually write that, but you guys would know better than me about that.
Mary?
If we don't decide today and we're only deciding in January, and why would the public be lined up to come to that if they didn't really know what the guidelines were? I think it sounds to me like we already have guidelines, and the guidelines are that we can ask the public clarifying questions, and if the public wants to give us materials that are printed, we can say yes, sure, okay, and we can accept it from them. I don't really see that we're changing anything in terms of what our opportunity is or what our legal relationship is. We're just utilizing opportunity that we already have. If we've agreed that we're going to engage with each of the member of the public, and we're going to ask clarifying questions, and we're going to cap the time that people speak, it seems to me like we've done the work. And then we don't even have to say anything specific to the public. We can just call it the public invited to be heard. And then we just utilize opportunity that we already have baked into our our board structure.
I guess that's the only part that I'm a little bit confused on. Is it, so what Heather just told us is that we already could ask clarifying questions, and we don't have to do that to everybody. But that's different than like what I thought people were kind of focusing on, which was a little bit more of like a back and forth with people, which then has to be done to everybody who speaks. So
Well,
I was seeing those as two separate things. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, if we don't want to get in trouble by being seen as representatives of the city, then all we need, is to avoid saying, well, I'll see to it that the city does what you suggest. I mean, we just have to avoid speaking for the city. We have to speak for ourselves, and we need to have a statement read, which exists somewhere. We had it read by legal in one of our meetings. I think it was the April meeting, saying, what our actual responsibilities are. We advise city council. Heather, you were.
I found the information that was given to us by city attorney's office that was shared with you all at the October 22 meeting. So it had been basically a year ago that we had this conversation, and it says there's nothing that says public invited to be heard must be 3 minutes. Most boards follow that standard in order to mirror city councils. We already voted to change that to 5 minutes. Board members can vote to change the length of individual comment period as long as all members of the public are given the same amount of time to speak. Board members can vote to change their agenda format to incorporate a time for board member responses to public invited to be heard, but they must respond to all comments, not pick and choose. However, there are some caveats to this approach. This is very much not in line with proper parliamentary procedure. Part of the problem is it's not clear who we mean by they in the context of a board. Members address only the chair or address each other through the chair per Robert's rules. Would all members address the comment just the chair, and in addition, addressing the public by responding to each comment risks the board going beyond its roles specified in the charter and in the Longmont Municipal Code 2.96.020 to be advisory only and could exceed the enumerated powers in the code. Addressing the public directly feels like speaking for the city rather than hearing public comment as part of the board's proper duty to identify topics pertaining to its substantive mission and advising the city council in that regard. Even city council cannot directly state a position or policy of the city. Board members can vote to include a board member, council, staff comment section in their agenda, at which time they can do a round robin where everyone gets a chance to comment on what was brought up in public invited to be heard, and then vote for further action on any particular topic. This is a good solution to the problem discussed above. It also permits the board to stick to the agenda and keep to a reasonable time frame. Board members can add a second public invited to be heard section, which I'm assuming would allow the public to make their position heard regarding the topics the board is discussing that day, and then follow up comments. This would bring the board more in line with city council practice. And then board members can do any or all of the above. None are mutually exclusive. So from that, we moved the public invited to be heard into be after the general business items. And I think at that time, what other change did we make?
I don't believe we made a change. I think we just re-educated
Just moved
ourselves
the
that we
agenda,
could,
yeah, to
that
be
items
after
from the board could include raising a topic that had been presented in public invited to be heard amongst
Yes.
the board only.
Yes.
Mary?
So could we just formalize that after we've heard from the public, we're going to do a response round robin that's got a time limit on it? And it's basically going to be, I mean, if we've agreed that it's largely going to be asking for clarifying questions. It sounds like that's
So
what
I think Mary, the part of the round robin was what the board decided to, if you all had something that you wanted to address from the public invited to be heard, that you would bring that up during the items from the board, is what you all decided last year during that conversation.
And am I right that the clarifying questions are something that we can actually ask after the person speaks?
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah.
so we have those two separate things.
Yeah,
Okay, so it sounds like we already have the structures that we need. We just haven't been applying them.
Yeah. So maybe in the script for the chair, one thing that we could do in the items from the board is just to reiterate that
it's
that is one
already
of the,
there.
is it?
Hmm.
Oh, I'm not looking at the right. No, it's not. There's
From
nothing
the
on the
items
script.
from the board? Does it say, this
It-
is where you
it-
would ask if there was any comments? Okay, I thought I added
No.
that.
I didn't miss something.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think that we should have Heather send us this information and we should have read it all and then further clarify what our course of action is going to be at the beginning of the next meeting, simply based on the fact that these structures already exist and that
Yeah.
it seems like we all need a little study in the interim.
And
That's what
I
I
also
mean.
think that I also think it'd be important for to us to have a little statement just about our role and what we can do. That is, I don't know if it's read before the public invited to be heard, or if it's read when we discuss, probably before the public invited to be heard, just to make sure that everybody there is on the same page. But it seems like maybe that would be something that would best written by a staff member
By city staff. Heather, would you feel okay just reading
It's
that? whole
already
section?
written in the code if you want to just read the code of what the purpose
Okay.
of the board is.
That's so if we
Okay.
could just include that in the script, then I think we're good. And so, well, all right. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
I move that we close this discussion since it seems like we already have all the answers we need.
Okay.
We just have to study up
Yeah.
on them.
We should, I move that we congratulate 2022 Sustainability Advisory Board for solving this problem. Before we talked about it. All right. Great. Okay. Do people feel good there? Can we cruise along? Oh, Ralph?
Did we just determine, there's not gonna, you mentioned a script several times. Is there actually gonna be something written, or are we just saying that the chair will read the
That-
rule?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, is that when you chair, Heather sends you this script so you don't forget anything and you remember all the important stuff. And so if it's in there to be read, then whoever's chairing will read it. So it seems like that's what I was referring to.
Sure, that sounds good to me.
And that's to put it in at the public invited to be heard.
I think so, yeah. So as we invite them, because there's already a little preamble that we read there. And then so it feels like it would just be natural to fit it in there. Great. All right, look at us. Are there any items from staff? No? Okay. Any items from the board? Charles.
Yeah, just a quick note. The city had their transportation mobility plan kickoff meeting back about 3 weeks ago or something like that. Lisa and I attended. It was we both attended virtually, and there was also in-person part of the meeting, and it was actually very well attended and had representatives from other cities, etc. The audio was terrible, so Lisa's not here to confirm that, but we could barely understand what they were saying. It was very choppy. We didn't hear too much, but we did get a brief report from them about some of the things they want to do. There were questions brought up about equity, about multi-use pathways, and encouraging public transportation, all kinds of things. Unfortunately, again, we just couldn't hear well enough. Hopefully at future meetings, they solve the audio problem and we can report more detail about that. But it looks like something that's useful for us to engage with, because the transportation and sustainability have, relevance to each other.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Robert.
So there was either last meeting or the meeting before last, there was talk about some sort of gathering of Front Range or neighboring community advisory boards around sustainability or that sort of thing. Has that actually happened yet? Or
Ralph, I believe we can
I
answer
can
this.
speak to that. Charles and I volunteered to be part of this collaboration among communities in the Front Range, and that Westminster was initiating. We were given them the contact people's names. They sent us a letter. I'm not sure if Charles did or if he saw it. I sent a letter back. Have not heard anything more, so there's no further movement yet on that. If I don't hear anything by after the holidays, I'll shoot them another letter to see. They may just be gathering yays and nays from the other communities, but that's where that stands.
Great, thank you. Any other items from the board? Okay, I'm assuming we have no items from council. There are informational attachments attached to your packet. Yes, there are. There are a number of them. And I believe with that, we have reached the end of the meeting. Does anybody want to move to adjourn? Oh, do we have any items from the child?
He's just getting ready to join the board in 16 years.
Wonderful. Okay. Does anybody want to move to adjourn?
Yeah,
I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second it if Charles moved.
Wonderful. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Have a wonderful Tofurkey day.
Thank
You
you
too.
all.
Thanks, everyone.
See you all in the
Happy
new year.
Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.